session is laser scanner spec sheets. Chris is with Top Curve Consulting. He's the chair of our scanning committee. He's going to be presenting on one of the two main projects that we're working on in the laser scanning subcommittee. So take it away.
Thank you, John. So my name is Chris Kercheval. I originally got into reality capture working for ZNF USA as a technical sales and support technician. And one of the things that I encountered in my career with ZNF was customers that were trying to compare one product to another. And a lot of times it would be, I'll have to call you back. Try to do some calculations and, get as good of a comparison as possible to the product that I was representing to another one that they may have had interest in. So that's initially how I got my start in the reality capture industry and how my frustration with scanner spec sheets began. So to kind of take it back a little bit, let's say in the beginning, there's one product. That product takes a little while to be adopted by the masses, and then it'll start to gain popularity or wither away. In this particular instance, this first product was a little game changer, like the OG game changer. It actually changed the way people did what they were doing. Over time, one product turned into two. You had more manufacturers. Each one coming to market was trying to differentiate their product from another one. Over time, what you end up with is a lot of a similar product from different manufacturers, each looking for their own distinguishing feature or selling point. And I kind of imagine the salespeople to be akin to the Wild West, right? You have a lot of snake oil salesmen that they don't necessarily ask, what you need. They ask what you have. Oh yeah, my product solves that problem. I can't tell you how many times I've run into something that on its face, all of those are true, just not all at the same time. So given the differentiation between products, everyone's trying to stand out. You end up with what I call the Wild Wild West. So what I'm actually talking about is cars. You have the Model T Ford, right? It was the literal game changer and started the automobile industry. If you look now, we have, in just the car realm, a lot of different variations. What sets one apart from another? One is maybe your daily workhorse if you have a family. If you don't have a whole lot of travel requirements, maybe a Smart for 2 is the right vehicle for you. If you have a lot of money and you like to go fast, maybe you're into a Lamborghini or a Porsche. So there's a lot of options that are out there. Now, given all of those options, and given this Wild West sort of snake oil salesman type of mentality, everyone's just trying to make numbers. They want to sell their product. They want to get it out to market. It took about 50 years until we had some standards. The Monroney sticker came in 1958. It was a government person who decided that we needed to have a standard. And the standard was to put the metrics that the manufacturers were claiming into a standardized form and put it in the same place on every vehicle. As the industry had grown and adopted electric, we came up with a miles per gallon equivalent to put everything on the same plane. Now, how does that apply to laser scanning? Well, laser scanning and automobiles are very similar in that they're rather expensive. The price range varies. You can finance them. And oftentimes you outgrow one and need to either supplement or replace with another unit. So to kind of tie into the last presentation, in 1998, the CIRAX became sort of adopted by the engineering and architecture community. That was the OG game changer for reality capture. If you look now, we have several products in just the medium range of terrestrial scanning. We also have products that are handhelds. So we have something like the Carta Stencil, we have the BLK To Go, Regal, as well as Trimble, ZNF, Leica, and Faro. So we have many manufacturers that are all making a product that is essentially doing the same thing. Now, I don't know who your sales reps are, but I've talked to quite a few. I've been that guy once or twice myself. That you say what you need to in order to try to close the sale, right? So if you're going off of what your salesmen tell you, you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt right now. Your other option is to look at the spec sheets. So the current state of product comparison can oftentimes look like this. Product A has 3 pages and they tell you everything you would ever want to know about that scanner. Your comparison product might have a 1-page summary. You could also get into the ones that have 6 or 7 pages, but they don't really tell you any specifics about the product. They give you a lot of hyperbole and marketing fluff, which is something that I would like to honestly change for the industry to be able to move forward. Let's take the marketing out of the spec sheets and get down to just the facts. So if you look at 2, 3 products, what you'll oftentimes notice is that you can't compare product A to product B to product C. Some of the reasons for that are you just can't compare the metric that they're giving you with the metric that another product has. That can come into play with reflectivity values. The percentages for white, black, and gray are not necessarily all the same. For the most part, the distance is going to be at 10 meters. But how are you supposed to compare 16% to 20%? We don't have enough information from the manufacturer to put those on a 1-to-1 scale. Accuracy metrics. I've seen some that are listed in seconds, some that are degrees, minutes, seconds, some are rads, millirads. It goes across the board. So for the most part, you can do a comparative analysis, but there's a couple of metrics that are out there that you just can't convert to anything else. So if you're looking solely for accuracy, you really don't know. And resolution settings. Some give you a straightforward, this is what you're going to get at this distance, you'll have a point spacing of X amount. Others give you more of a percentage. You can't really compare those two, so doing an apples to apples comparison at this point across the board in just say the medium range terrestrial scanners is near impossible. So the goal of the USIBD spec sheet is to come up with an apples to apples comparison. What we propose, and this is based on about 4 years worth of the Cornerstone reports, looking at what is the most popular topic or of highest interest from the users that have replied to the Cornerstone reports. So putting that all together, this is our proposed USIBD at-a-glance spec sheet. So you can see that the 2 products that I listed earlier, a 3-page and a 1-page spec sheet, are now condensed to 1-page infographics. We're going to give you a picture of what the scanner looks like, as well as the manufacturer's name, product name, and we can go through the list and see that one is a phase shift and another one is a time of flight. We have our range, our accuracies, and then we have more specifics on the size of the unit. Size is kind of important to know, can you fly with this? The units are getting smaller and smaller, so it's not like you're trying to put a Cyrax on an airplane. That's definitely not going to fit in any overhead bin that I've ever seen. However, most of the units now are coming with either a smaller case, like a backpack, or smaller packaging with thicker foam that will enable you to either fit it under the seat or into the overhead bin. So the other metrics that we have on there are the field of view, as well as the batteries. One of the things that's kind of important to know is how long does it take to charge the battery, and also how long am I going to get out of it when I'm scanning in the field. Obviously that varies based on your settings. If you're running high resolution scans, you're probably going to get less scans in than if you're running a whole lot of low resolution scans with no color. But as an average, and what the manufacturers either are presenting or what we've known from user feedback from in the field, this would be your analysis of charge time and usage time on the batteries. So on the bottom we have connectivity and we have targeting. So this will show you the availability of that particular unit to connect with any other devices. In this particular instance, what we're looking at is the ability to run the scanner on a tablet or a phone. Now, when I say tablet or a phone, some you can connect to directly through the Wi-Fi. But in this case, what I'm talking about is the manufacturer's software for field registration. So both ZNF and Leica have a software that is designed specifically for the field and pre-registering your scans. You'll see in looking at the check marks at the bottom there that Leica gives you the ability to run the software on both a mobile phone as well as a tablet, whereas ZNF to date does not give you the phone capability, but you can run Scout on a tablet or a Microsoft Surface. The storage capabilities: USB-C, onboard storage, SD card, and then looking towards the future, any kind of external hard drive or the ability to also connect with a drone. We have the targeting, being spheres, checkerboard, QR codes, and prisms. Once again, we're trying to cover bases for the future. There's products that are going to come out that are going to want to have more of a survey tie-in. So the availability to do a survey target as well as a prism could potentially one day be something that comes to use in your evaluation of two products. So taking this from these two products that are in the medium range terrestrial scanner, our classifications moving forward are going to be long range, medium range, and short range for terrestrial scanners. We would also like to expand that to include handheld units, drones, and structured light. So something like a dot product that's using more of a light-based. As those products come to market, they get more competition. We can put their spec sheets on a one-to-one. That's the idea moving forward, is as new products come to market, let's take the information that the manufacturers give us and put it into a one-to-one ratio, apples to apples, at a glance spec sheet, one page, not 3 here and 5 there. So the real world meaning, the numbers that the manufacturers give you can kind of give you an idea of your expected results. However, what does that really mean when you get the scanner out into the field? What does it mean when you're doing two projects of completely different natures? You're going to get different results inside of a warehouse than you are outside scanning in direct sunlight on a tank farm. So for that, we are planning a large-scale scanner shootout. We're going to piggyback off of the scanner shootout that we've done in the past and will be presented later today. We're going to use those same metrics and the same materials boards. And the idea being to use a large arena, such as a hockey arena, something like this that would be very open. And in that capacity, we're able to see what is the actual usable range. Manufacturer says 130 meters. Well, what's the point spacing at 130 meters? No one's going to actually use that. But for the newer users, they think 130, oh, okay, that's how far it goes, and then it just cuts off. In reality, that's not really what happens, but how far out is actual usable data? Push comes to shove, can you get the job done with those points at distance? Also, common surfaces. So doing something such as a hockey arena, you would get a good mixed use of materials. You have either cotton or leather for the seats. You have sharp angles on chair armrests. You have concrete, trailing edges on stairs, HVAC. All of these mixed materials are going to be at different distances away from the scanner and different angles from each of the setup points to give you a good real-world physical view of what these numbers are really going to mean to your project. And lastly, we could also bring in the accuracy, right? Are these points coming in the same location across the board? Or does something at range look completely different when you compare all of the scanners at the same time using something like Cloud Compare? And we just stack the different layers of point clouds on top of each other, focus in on one particular area, and then look at how each of those scanners compare. How many points do we have in a given area from a given scanner? So that's kind of the goal long-term, is to put everything on an apples to apples, one-to-one ratio. If the metric does not compute, to something that we can compare it to, we're going to leave it out. It's not our job to take the manufacturer's data and put it all in the same metric. My goal would be that the manufacturers would get on board and start publishing things in the same metrics. If we're going to use 10% at 10 meters, let's do it across the board. Let's not use an off percent or an off distance just to try to make your product look good. Ultimately, the consumer is the one that's losing out. So, open discussion for thoughts, ideas. What would you like to see in an apples to apples comparison? And anything for an evaluation in terms of the actual data from the scanners.
I'm Lonnie with Region back in 2010 to 2014, the National Institute of Standards and Technology worked on the USIBD Laser Scanner technology for construction applications. So they actually identified quite a few use cases, and they started measuring accuracy, the impact of distance, the impact of different materials. Have you guys considered collaborating with them at all?
So in talking with some of the people at NIST, essentially they agree that it would be nice to have everything in the same metric. However, given the nature of their organization, they're merely in a position where they can test and create a standard, but not judge or convert, right? That's not necessarily in their wheelhouse. That's not what they're, trying to do. In participating in the scanner, I don't remember the name, the ASTM standard that was done, I want to say about 5 years ago. All the manufacturers came and we scanned spheres that were in preset locations and had been measured with a laser tracker. We also scanned a material board that was moving at set distances and also being tracked. So what they were trying to do is compare the accuracies that the manufacturers claimed to the actual physical accuracies when you got that product into the field. So they're kind of on board with it, just not in a position to say, definitively an answer one way or the other. Any other questions, comments, anything that you guys would like to see from your manufacturers? Personally, I don't like when a salesperson claims, well, this scanner can scan 3 million points a second, and it can do it in a minute with color. Well, okay, it can do maybe all three of those things, just not all at the same time, so please quit telling people that. What are you guys experiencing? Like, looking for new scanners, is there something that's top of, your mind? It has to have this.
I would say, turnaround time. The entire process, right? So we found that sometimes you're using faster hardware, like you talked about where it's like, oh, we're getting more points. Now you have more data to deal with, right? So you have more to process.
Right.
And nobody's really looking at the entire, workflow of time to scan, time to deliver, and sometimes it's a give and take where it might take a little bit longer to capture the data, but it's easier to process on the other end versus capturing it really quickly and spending a little bit more time processing it, and you're actually at a similar time for delivering the actual product. So there's a lot of marketing around the speed of the scanner, but not necessarily the full turnaround time. And that sort of falls on our shoulders as users to evaluate that and see, okay, what is my full turnaround time going to be based on what I'm scanning, what I'm using, et cetera, et cetera.
So acquisition to deliverable being a very important timeline. Scanners doing 2 million points a second are getting a lot of information very fast. The availability now to pre-register, pre-align your scans from different manufacturers with mobile software is great. However, you still have to finalize that process, right? You're not registering in the field, you're aligning in the field, right? Scan A goes to scan B, on down the line, nothing's finalized, you're just pre-placing things. Like if you're putting a puzzle together, you're essentially building your outline, but you haven't really completed anything yet, right? You gotta do that back in the office. And given that different manufacturers have different ways of writing their file data, right? Some are broken down into 50, 60 segments per setup. Others, it's one mass file. So that takes time, right? What would you say would be a good metric for an evaluation of that? We're going to use the manufacturer's field software and then take that to, say, an E57 output deliverable?
Yeah, that's a good question. We'll have to dive into that. I think it's almost like you have to have the same thing.
Right.
You have to have like a test workflow, right? Like we're going to scan.
So same resolution settings, color, yes, because that can be a big deciding factor. Whether it takes 1 minute or 4 can kind of kill you in terms of your production over the course of your day, right? You're not limited to how fast you can move, you're limited to how fast can the scanner complete the task. So if we put the same metric in place, say a medium resolution scan, we're looking for X amount of points at 10 meters on an object with color. How long does that take to complete, say, 25 scans, and then take that to a deliverable in a neutral file format, right? I think trying to write out to maybe an E57 or a PTS file, something that is not specific to any one given manufacturer, would give a good idea. And then in terms of how would we use that data moving forward? What's your idea on that?
Oh, no, I was going to add to kind of what you were saying. And again, when I looked at the sheet out and I noticed it, like, and I didn't touch on this with regards to the scan rate, or particular scan rate settings that you have, resolution and quality, color. Obviously, all that is time.
Okay.
So, you know, let's say a medium, if you were to put, let's say, okay, let's say 250,000 points per second setting, what would be the first scan and what would be the time on that? So like, I don't know, like Rick stands a series of different resolution settings, probably not going to all of them here, but at least, like a low, medium, high res scan.
So we did put that in on time. That would be a medium resolution scan with color. So the difference on here is I have to check the numbers. There's a new version of the Imager 5016 that came out called the 5016A. So that would obviously be its own special spec sheet. But essentially what they've done is double their acquisition rate from 1 to 2 million points per second. And they've also started to cut down on the time. Right, so more of a 1-to-1 with the RTC to the 5016. Those two are very similar in size. They're also very similar in terms of how you operate them with the manufacturer's field software. Right, they're kind of the first two to come out with a workflow for the field solution. So putting those two together, some big differences come to play in terms of range and time. So one has shorter range and is way faster. The other one has double the range, but takes almost twice as long. So you can kind of compare which one is going to be better for my workflow. To take that to the next level would be, okay, how long does it take me to get to a deliverable product? Let's say a fully registered E57 file. If we're not even cleaning it, right? Because that's kind of subjective.
Yeah, I think we have to set some ranges. Like, how tight is that registration?
Right, we'd have to do a tolerance as well as what is our registration technique. If we're going to do cloud to cloud, that's something that all the manufacturers do cloud to cloud. It's all their own internal algorithms, right? We can do that, and we can see how that software actually operates in terms of its time, right? How time consuming is it to run a cloud-to-cloud comparison on 10 scans, 20 scans, whatever we decide, to get to X tolerance on our registration.
Hey, Chris, I know we got like 5 minutes left. There's a good discussion going on. all this stuff is making me think about some of the discussions we've had in our committee meetings on this. And, the spec sheet is, all we're trying to do with this is kind of normalize the comparison, right? Get it out of the marketing realm of these manufacturers and bring it into something that's just, like Chris said, apples to apples. And then, charting out some, workflows that give us time metrics would be great. I think it gets a lot more complicated when you get, past just comparing the units and you start talking about processing data, because there's so many ways you can process data. So, maybe we come up with, some standardized workflows that we test to give us some metrics. It seems like it might get a little beyond the spec sheet.
Right.
Just, but it could still be very valuable. I have a question on the spec sheet, though, when you were bringing up the Monrooney sticker. And, I don't know much about the evolution of the sticker itself. Is the sticker we see today the same as what it was?
Exactly the same in terms of its idea and its layout. The only thing that's changed is the content based on the evolution of the automobile industry since the late 50s. So initially, much like what we have today in laser scanning, it's kind of the Wild West in terms of what the manufacturer presents, right? They can say this car has a 2-liter engine but makes 1,500 horsepower. They can say that, but there's nobody there to kind of back them up, right? It's every man for themselves. I'm just trying to make my numbers. My goal is to take that sort of sales and marketing out of the spec sheet. We just want to look at the numbers that the manufacturer presents. We're not changing those numbers in any way, shape, or form. We're just reformatting how they're presented to make an apples-to-apples comparison as much as you possibly can. As this would hopefully get adopted, the manufacturers would maybe start to adhere to the USIBD standard and present their own spec sheet. All manufacturers now have to comply with the Monrooney sticker that you see on every car. Used or new, has that sticker on it that shows you all of the options. It shows you all of the hard facts on the engine and the performance of that car. All of that is listed there. Same idea, it's just, this is in its infancy, whereas the sticker has been around since 1958.
How do you guys feel about having something like this? Is this something that would be valuable?
My main thing is too, is the data wasn't being looked like to me.
And that's where the scanner shootout comes in.
Yes.
So these are the numbers the manufacturer gives you. The large-scale scanner shootout would be a visualization of those numbers. So rather than just go off of the numbers, look at those two scans from the same positions and then compare. What does that really look like to my project? What can I expect to get out of this? And that's where it gets fun.
Give it up for Chris, though.